Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit. Welcome to Dungeons & Dragons Online. I am fully aware that 90% of the comments on this video will be about the new intro. Needless to say, I will not be reading them. Just being honest about it, no point in wasting your time. Right, so I thought I might start doing some DDO videos since it is the game that I decided to go back to after quitting WoW. I had a lot of very positive experiences in DDO back in 2009, and I do actually have a basic introductory video that I did back in 2009, and that is available on my channel. There's a link on the screen right now if you wish to go straight there. It might be advisable if you want to know some of the basic systems behind the game. Now, I kind of picked the wrong quest to come back to, really, I suppose, from an entertainment standpoint, because Archer Point is one of the most basic and probably one of the dullest quests in terms of what actually ends up happening, because it's basically a very long set of kill everything. Now, there aren't all that many quests that are like that in DDO, but there certainly are some. Nobody ever claimed that DDO had amazing, incredible quests that were all unique and completely different. But I have to say that even the generic kill quests are a little bit different to World of Warcraft. I think the thing you've got to understand first is that DDO is very much an instanced game. It is pretty much all in an instance. Now, some people might absolutely despise that. Personally, I actually don't care. The way that WoW's actually become to me is just a set of instances anyway. In fact, it has been that for a very long time, because I've really... Anyway... This quest right here is in an instance. You can go in with a party if you like, or you can go in solo. As you saw on the initial screen when we went in there, there are actually multiple difficulty levels for this quest, and the vast majority of quests, not all of them, but most of them, do have multiple difficulty settings. In this case, I'm here on normal. Now, I could go in on harder or elite, but at the moment, I've got a few problems with my account. Right now, Turbine is migrating accounts over for Lord of the Rings Online. They use the same account backend system for Lotro as they do for DDO. And there's all sorts of problems with it at the minute, and I can't resubscribe to this game. So currently, I'm on a free-to-play account, which means I'm quite limited in what I can do, but it's enough to do this quest, so that's kind of the main thing. That also means that hard and elite difficulties are locked for me, so I can't go in there with that because I only have a free account. You can do the hard and elite difficulties by default when you have a paid-for account, when you actually subscribe to the game. I'll probably explain a little bit more about the free-to-play model in future videos. So I want to focus really on combat within this particular video, since that's all this quest is. This is a timed quest whereby I'm asked to slay at least 45 enemies, kill the leader of the Hobgoblins to break the raiders' morale, and I can optionally also kill an Ogre Shaman that's allied with the Hobgoblin Raiders if I want to do so, and I will if I can find the bastard. Now, the combat system in this game is a little bit different to, say, World of Warcraft. It's a bit more hack and slashy, and the game marketed itself by having this bone-crunching combat system, but it does actually have some hotkey abilities as well. It's a mixture of hack and slashy stuff with an odd dice roll system. You might notice there's a D20 on the screen right here. It actually does have a D20 style roll, so you might... Any trees. Now, as you can see, I'm engaging a very large number of these Hobgoblins, and things are not going all that well. I've already lost some constitution from taking stat damage, and I'm also poisoned, which is not ideal, but I'm okay. So, the game does have a basic aiming element. It's not like, oh my god, let's aim for sweeping headshots and nonsense like that. That's not actually the case. But you have to aim sort of in the vague direction with a ranged weapon in order to actually hit. You can lock on if you like, and it also has a collision system whereby you will hit whatever's in front of your target. So this also applies to enemies, which is kind of neat. So if you've got ranged enemies and you put, say, melee enemies between you and the ranged guy, there is a chance that the melee enemies will get shot by their companions. And you can see that I'm using charm and things like that to take mind control of various enemies here in order to make them fight each other, which is usually a very good idea. Try and split things down, particularly when you're trying to solo content like this. Archer Point is not the hardest quest, but it does require you to deal with a large amount of enemies at once, and if you aren't a class that can really do that, then soloing it is pretty hard. My build of Bard here is primarily focused on doing heavy range damage. It's also got a good selection of buffs and some cool crowd control. If need be, I can off-tank in a pinch, but don't have a particularly high armor class. I can only use light armor, so I'm not all that great with it, but I do have a decent set of weapons. You can see them alter the attributes of various weapons by stripping magical powers of some and recombining them with others. I don't fully understand it because I've only just got back to the game and it's updated several times since 2009 when I last played it, but that's the basic gist of it as far as I can tell. The weapon sets that I'm using here are for different situations. In this case, for instance, I'm trying to fight a wolf that's trying to hit me at close range. It's also very fast, so it's difficult for me to evade. I can evade the hobgoblins quite easily, but otherwise I'm thinking, well, there's no point in me trying to shoot these guys. I should get my weapons out. I have a enchanted shield right there, which is quite nice, and I'm using a notched heavy mace, which actually I believe does extra sonic damage. Now, in this case, the elemental damage, or the damage type, does matter quite a lot. For instance, if you're fighting skeletons, fighting a skeleton with a mace is a good idea. Fighting a skeleton with a bow and arrow, or, say, a sword, is generally not a good idea, because, well, they're skeletons, and they don't tend to take a lot of damage that way. Again, a lot of these aspects are taken from the Dungeons & Dragons board game, and they've been adapted in such a way that they make sense in a video game environment. I do like the fact that the game turns around and says to you, you know what, that gear you're using right now is probably not good enough. It is a good idea to do that. Back in the day, WoW used to do that with resistance gear. Admittedly, it was a fairly poor system in comparison to what this game has, whereby different weapon types are useful in different situations, and there's also a lot more weapon diversity here as well. You can make a build based around certain weapons, and I know you can do that to some degree, certainly with rogues or one-handers and two-handers with warriors in World of Warcraft, but in this case, you often have to take a feat in order to use an advanced or exotic weapon, and usually those weapons are dodge bonus while you're doing so the chances are that enemies will not hit you in the process. Now, this fight is getting a little bit dodgy. I'm up against two Black Wolves as well as a Hobgoblin Chieftain, and I'm out of mana points. Mana points is kind of weird in this game in comparison to most MMOs, because mana points can't be refilled in the way that you might think. They don't recharge like they do in WoW or other games like that. You have to actually go to a rest shrine inside the adventure area in order to regain your mana. You can do it with potions as well, but mana potions are really expensive, and it's not recommended for newer players to use mana potions at all. In fact, if you actually get mana potions in, say, a chest or whatever, you should sell them on the auction house because you can get loads of cash for them, and that will allow you to afford some nice weapons and upgrades. I do like the mana system quite a lot, though, because it does force you to be fairly conservative, and in this case, I actually have a bard that is focusing a lot on buffs, so I have a meta magic feat called Focus, I think it's Extend Spell or something like that. Spell Focus, I don't know what it's called, but whatever it does, it allows you to increase and indeed double the lengths of buffs, which do matter quite a lot in this game. In World of Warcraft, for instance, extending a buff would just be a convenience thing. Here, it actually saves you spell points over the course of a long dungeon, so it's very useful. These rest shrines that you probably saw on the map earlier as these blue statues can only be used once, and then they'll go into a recharge period. Depending on the difficulty level of the dungeon, depends on what the recharge period is. If you're doing it at a low difficulty, you can use them again at some point in the dungeon. If you're doing it at a high, it is certainly designed around group play. You can go around in groups of, it's either 5 or 6, I can't remember which, I think it's 6. And there is also raid content in this game. Admittedly, I have no experience with that, so I'm not going to discuss it really, but it's nice that it's there. Ah, there we go, that's the Ogre Shaman, and killing this should actually finish this off, because this is the last enemy I'll need to complete the quest. And there we go. That actually got me a rank up as well. There are levels and sub-levels within this game, so it's kind of odd, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's pretty neat. You also get a scorecard as well that you can see there, and you'll get bonuses depending on what you did. For instance, I got an experience bonus for being a vandal. I broke a bunch of breakables. If you hunt through dungeons to find all the breakables, I think you can get up to about a 25% experience bonus for doing so. I also got a bonus for doing it flawlessly, i.e. with no deaths, and for doing it the first time. The game does allow you to repeat content, and back in the day, repeating content was kind of required. These days, not so much. They've got so much content in there, especially if you're subscribed and you have access to all of it, that you don't really need to repeat stuff. But if you repeat on a different difficulty level, you get a bonus for a first-time completion there as well. So that's pretty cool. There we go. There is the hand-in for that one, and there's often a lot of different rewards you can pick. In this case, I'm just going to pick Tales of Valor. That actually gives the guild experience. There is a guild system in this. There has been for years with experience and rewards and things like that, which obviously WoW only recently adopted. There you go, folks, that's Arrow Point, and I'll bring you some more quests in future. My name has been TotalBiscuit, and I will see you next time.